All right, it's 11:15. According to Jim, we got to get going. Well, I'm going to start by just saying, great to be here. It feels weird. This morning I got up and knowing that I was going to do this for a while now, and it's like, wow, I can spread this stuff out. It's been when you only preach every so often, you got to try to get everything in one Sunday, and now it's like I can do just a little bit, and then next week I can do a little bit more. But I wanted to start, as my first official message as senior pastor. I want to set the table, right? Before you serve a meal, you got to set the table. So we're going to talk a little bit. I started a little bit 2 weeks ago. Apologize for missing last week. I heard Rev had a great word. It was right on. So that's the thing about the body. There's more than one. There's more than one appendage. Where none of us are in this alone. Which is the first thing I want to just recognize all the leadership team. Jerry, David, Randy, Waco, Trish. Have been more than supportive through this whole deal that, I'm scared to death. I mean, just to be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen, right? When you get something new, you don't know what it looks like, and you don't know where you're going, and you don't know if you can do it, and you get all these questions, and they have not allowed me to think anything but positive thoughts from this point, from the time we started talking about it until now. So I just wanted to thank all those people in my life, and I treasure your presence in my life. So. But I started talking a couple weeks ago about a culture of the kingdom, right? And I went through a whole list of stuff that God had gave me. So I'm just going to kind of start with, to me, figuring out exactly what do you mean by a culture of kingdom and just kind of explaining that, and then we'll just going to start moving down the list. Pastor Scott, he told me, he goes, you got like 2 years worth of material in 15 minutes. That's not fair. So, I got a lot of material that I really feel like God's called us to as a body, and so I just as He pulls them to the top of the list each week, that's kind of what we're going to go through and figure out how to make this body into a culture of the kingdom. Okay, not that it's not already, right? I just feel like if anybody feels like, well, I'm already there, well, just understand that there's never an end. There's never an end to what always grow. I mean, we always can learn. I don't care if you're 125 or if you're 14. Even at 14, you can learn. It's true. So I just believe that people are coming. Now, I want to caveat that by saying I don't necessarily mean people are coming in this building. I mean, people are coming to you, right? The people you work with. I had a guy the other day, I'm walking around the warehouse, and it's crazy. We're about to open, and there's, we have operations people in there, which I know you have no idea what that means, but it means everything's crazy. I mean, people are just running around asking for stuff, and everybody's busy. And I'm just walking down the thing, and I was joking around and smiling, and a guy walks up to me and stops me. I don't even know who he was. He goes, "How are you so happy?" So my point is, people are going to see when you understand how to cultivate this in your life. And you don't have to preach to them. All you got to do is just keep living your life the way God's called you to do it, and He's going to do all the heavy lifting. That's where I think we have tried too hard to do all the lifting ourselves. Me included. I mean, I'm not, again, please don't misunderstand me. This is what God told me. So hopefully it means something to some of y'all too. Y'all may have it all figured out, but I just know that I didn't, and he's been just dumping information into me. So we have to. Oh yeah, people are coming. So the question is, what are they going to find? That's where it gets a little bit scary because if you start looking at who am I really? How do I believe really? How am I acting really? What are my motivations really? When I say something to somebody, what are my motivations really? Right? from deep down in here, not just the words, but what are behind the words. Because a lot of times you can say the words, and they may not have the effect you want them to, because down inside it may not be coming out with the right spirit or motivation, right? If it's not backed and covered and surrounded and entwined with love, then you're not going to get the result that you want. So as they come in, what are they going to find? And that's what I want to make sure as a body. Whether you're here, you're at work, you're in school, you're in wherever you're at, what are people going to find whenever they're searching? Because they are, man. I'm telling you, people are searching, and if we don't have anything to give them when that opportunity comes, that is a moment that is missed. Right? And I'm not saying God can't bring somebody else, but He's brought you. Okay, so we have to keep hope at the core of who we are. That is a tough one right now, is it not? I've seen so many people that, man, you listen to them on Facebook or you listen to them tell stories, and all they do is, well, the inflation this, and the stock market's going to do that, and I just don't know if we're going to be able to this or that, or, oh my gosh, the whole world's coming to an end. I'm going to buy 48 pounds of rice and beans and put it in my cellar, and just in case the whole world comes to an end, and I'll at least have something to eat for 14 days, and I'm going to have 14 boxes of bullets, so that way, I can kill 14, whatever, all that stuff that goes through your mind, right? And I have the same thoughts. I have a Frady hole, as Miss Becky always calls it. I've thought about filling it up with food and canned and stuff. There's nothing wrong with all that, but what I'm saying is we can't live our life in fear. All this stuff, they're all in fear. They don't know what to do, right? People of the world, I'm talking about unbelievers, right? That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the body necessarily, but it can creep in here. I have to tell you a story. I was at a meal with some friends this week, and all what I call true hardcore believers. I mean, just walking it, right? I mean, everybody that was in the room was mature believers, and we were talking, and the subjects weren't going positively. We talked about what are we going to do if the government comes down and they're going to start taxing us, and they're not going to let us do this, and all these different things they're facts, right? I mean, the government doesn't like the church. They want to get as many taxes as they can, and they don't like that we don't pay tax. Some of the stuff that you give in, right? Just honestly. But my point is, we were going down a path of not hope. But one person said something, and all of a sudden the whole room flipped, and it was like, yes, but God. But God has us. And then we started sharing testimonies of what God had done in our lives and things that had happened around the world and all these things. And man, just the whole room shifted and changed. And it's just a perfect example of what we have to do as believers. When we start hearing that stuff, people come to us, they're like, oh my gosh, my 401k is cut in half, and I just don't know what I'm going to do. And well, I may not know exactly about the 401k and the stock market, but I know this, my God is good. And my God has promised. He has promised me that He's going to take care of me. He is going to give me what I need. Right? That's where I'm talking about when I say a hope has to be a core of who we are. When that stuff starts happening, because man, I'm telling you, it is easy to go. It is easy to go down that road because they are facts. And again, facts versus truth is different. The truth is, God has me. God's got you. All you got to do is talk to Him, right? So, when we talk about culture of hope, culture of faith, all these things that we're going to be talking about, it can only be really be obtained. A culture can only be obtained through self-evaluation. What are my motivations? What am I doing? Am I really listening to God? All these things. Because I'm telling you, nobody was in that room the other day was meaning for any of that to be negative, or it was not meaning. But it just you just never know when all of a sudden you can start going down a path of not hope. Right? So self-evaluation and change. Sorry, I said it. Said the C word. Self-evaluation, and then what? You can't just self-evaluate and then keep going doing the same thing you've been doing. When you find something, you have to start to change it. You have to start to change it. And most of the time, Miss Becky said it back there this morning, in my personal journey, most of the time I try to do it myself. That's a big change that we could all try to change. Work on. Look at. Evaluate. Am I trying to do this myself? Or am I really allowing God to do it in me, through me, around me? Am I taking a step that I'm supposed to be taking, or am I taking a step because last time this happened, this is what I did, so guess what? I'm going to do that again. And that's okay to a certain degree, but we need to be checking in with what God's saying before we decide on how we're going to look at each situation that's in our life. And I'm a big question asker. I know I used to get upset with Pastor John when he's like, what's God showing you? And it's, I don't know. That's always my, most of the time you're just like, what it does is it forces you to think about it. It forces you to ask yourself, what is God telling me? As much as it did used to annoy me, now it's like I find myself thinking the same thing. Well, what is God telling you? As people talk to me, like, oh, crap. It is important. It is very important. But I ask myself questions all the time, so I started asking, okay, well, what is culture? What does that really mean, right? So I looked up the definition. There was quite a few of them. One of them was in the British dictionary, but I liked it a lot. But the first one, I just picked a few of them out because a lot of them start talking about cultivating, start talking about land. So I'm going to go into that next. But these are the ones that I thought kind of were good for our situation. It is the shared beliefs, behaviors, or social environment connected with a particular aspect of society. So it's as a believer, we're sharing these beliefs that God is good. We're sharing this, right? So when somebody comes in, no matter if they talk to you, whoever they talk to, there is a shared belief system in what we're talking about, right? So it's a whole culture around, we believe God is good. I know all these things are going, but God can do this. I believe God can heal you. I believe God can deliver you. I believe God is real. I believe God is, all these things that we're talking about, right? But it doesn't work for one or two people. It has to be a culture. It has to be a group of people. Now, do we have to all be sitting in the same room at the same time? Well, no. I believe there's people listening to it. In fact, I know a few of them that have the same belief systems that we have. And there's a culture that's bound up in that's probably across most of the country. It's really hard to believe how many people we actually do reach by streaming. They're part of the culture of what we're doing, or they wouldn't come back, right? So shared beliefs and behaviors and social environment connected to a particular aspect of society. The second one, a total of inherited ideas, beliefs, values, and knowledge, which constitute the shared basis of social action. So again, it's just a group of people with a shared set of values, beliefs, inherited ideas. That means it come down, from your parents and from, they're inherited, so you get them from others. So this last one is the one that was from the British. The attitudes, feelings, values, and behavior that characterize and inform society as a whole or any social group within. And I like this one because inform society. As a culture, you can inform society of your beliefs and your values and how God is and how you're living. And as people walk up to you, you can now, you've created that culture in your life. Now you get to share that with others as they witness it, as they see it, they're like looking at you thinking there's something different, but they don't know what it is. Right? So we get to share those feelings, those values and behaviors that characterize and inform society. That's pretty good. So now that we kind of understand a culture, anybody ever had a garden? I know I've had a garden before. Anybody ever garden like for real, more than just a pot, more than just a bucket, right? We're talking in the ground, But in order to do that, if you have, you'll understand where I'm about to go here. In order to have a good, thriving, fruitful garden, man, you got to cultivate, 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 cultivate. You can't even. We used to. I know. Pastor John and Becky know the same thing. We used to always travel on New Year, or we'd go to my cousin's house in Wisconsin on the 4th of July, and we'd come back after just a week, and everything's wrecked. Weeds are growing everywhere. They didn't get the right kind of water. They didn't. And then, so you have to continuously cultivate, even in the fall and the winter. If you really want a successful one, you got to, in the fall, you fertilize, you cultivate. When I say cultivate, I'm tilling, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But you got to work the ground all the time. In order to have something good in the spring, you got to cultivate it in the fall, in the winter, in order to, once you put the seed or plants in the ground, right? That's another part of culture is it has to be cultivated. It's the root of the word. It's cultivating your spirit, your soul, your mind, your body, the whole works. It has to be one. I mean, you can't just get saved and sit on your, what do you say, blessed assurance and expect to next spring that you're going to have a good fruitful garden. Whenever somebody comes up to you, if you're not cultivating what God's doing in your life, you're cultivating that conversation, that prayer, that worship, the thanksgiving, all those things that bring you all understand in the Solomon's temple, right? You know how you got to the Holy of Holies? You had to go through the outer court, which was prayer and thanksgiving. If you're not doing that stuff all the time, you can't get to the next level, right? So prayer and thanksgiving, excuse me, in a time where things aren't doing very good, when you talk about society, you talk about government, you talk about the economy, all these things, if you try to enter into the throne without prayer and thanksgiving, you're going to be, you have a hard time getting in there and being where you need to be once you get there. So cultivating the culture of the kingdom. This is the first one. And I'm going to tell a little story. I'm going to try to tell this story because it touched me so much that I wanted to actually become a senior pastor. So hopefully I can get across this story the way I heard it, at least well enough that you guys can get the gist of what it means. But it's actually a story from Chris Valentin that he was telling when he was first under Bill Johnson, and they went to this men's conference, and he goes, I'm not a dancer, I'm not a singer, but Bill Johnson was preaching, and he stops everything. He goes, I just feel like the Lord's telling us we got to get up and we got to dance. And he's like, I don't dance. That's for, this is what's going through his mind, he says. He's explaining through what goes through his mind. He's like, who's this guy? He can't tell me to get up and dance, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So he's like, all right, everybody stand up. And so he's like, everybody stands up. And he's like, well, I guess I got to stand up now. Everybody else is standing up. So he stands up. But the whole time he's mumbling in his mind, I'm not dancing. This guy, I'm not called for that. God hadn't called me to dance. And so, he goes through this whole thing. And then they start dancing. And so he's looking around. He goes, everybody in the room's dancing. All men. This is a men's conference. Right? And so it's all men. And, I don't know, most of the time when I went dancing, there was always girls involved. And so it's weird when a bunch of dudes are dancing. I can understand this whole process that he's going through. I'm sitting there. But he said he's standing there, and then he's like, well, heck, everybody is. So he starts doing a little bit of dancing or whatever. But the whole time he's mumbling through this thing, right? This is so, Bill, I can't believe Bill would make us do this and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he rides home with the guy who was his spiritual father, I believe, if I remember it right. But he goes, they're riding home, and he goes the whole way there. He's telling this guy, I can't believe Bill would make us do that. And he's like, he just complaining. He was murmuring, as the Bible would call it. He's murmuring about what was going on, what God's asked him to do, what Bill was asking him to do, and so on and so forth. And he said, I just knew this guy that was with him was on board. I just knew we were in agreement and we were going to come together and change how Bill does things and all these things. And he said the guy never said a word the whole way. And then he gets there, gets him to his house, and they stop. And he goes, I started to get out, and he grabbed my arm. And so I got back in, I looked at him, and he just looked at me and says, climb or die. And then he said, I got out, and he said he was still in his mind, still going through this. And then God started telling him, climb or die. What do you mean by climb or die? What that means is, if you're not climbing, if you're not moving, if you're not advancing, if you're not learning, you're dying. As a body, we have to climb or die. We cannot sit stagnant and just, look at the Dead Sea. There's no outlet, right? It's got water coming in, but there's nothing going out. And what happens? The whole body of water now cannot support life. We have to climb or die. And I believe that takes cultivation. Because like I said earlier, if you're in a situation that you've been in before and you've gotten yourself out of that situation, what are you going to do? You're going to do what you did before. And it might work 2, 3, 4 times. But as you become, as time passes, there's almost always a better way to do it. Whether you see it or not, whether it's comfortable or not. There's the biggest issue. I see a picture of a guy in my mind whenever I saw that, and God kind of gave me a little bit of a picture in my mind of what it looks like. If you've ever seen, somebody hanging on the side of a mountain, got 1 foot up or what, I can't do it, but they're just hanging there, right? He goes, are you going to just hang there, or are you going to keep climbing till you get to the top? They got those tents. You can buy a tent, nail it in, and put it on the side of the mountain, and you can live right there if you want to. And again, I'm not talking about salvation. This is not a salvation message, because I don't believe that. What I do believe is you can get saved and sit down. I do believe that. But I don't believe that you can continue to grow and you can continue to do things for what God wants you, and all the blessings, all the promises, all this kind of thing. It requires movement. It requires stepping. It requires forward movement, by the way. There's a difference between going backwards, because that's real easy. If you're on a hill and you're going upstairs, you don't even have to do anything. You just take it out of gear and let off the brake, buddy, you're going backwards. You'll go that way. And again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, by the way. Please don't take it that way. What I'm trying to say is that wherever you're at, I believe personally God's asking us to keep going, to keep climbing, to keep moving up, to keep advancing. If you read James 2, in fact, let's just look at James chapter 2. If I can find it. I hadn't looked. Forgot my glasses today. Dadgummit. I know. No, I did not want yours. That's silly. Elton John glasses. No, I'm good. I can muddle through here, buddy. So James 2, starting in verse 14. Faith without works. This is a lot of people don't like this one. This is not a good, fun, popular message, because, do I believe that you have to have works to be saved? I do not. I believe it says in Romans 10, 9 and 10, all you got to do is confess with your mouth who Jesus is. That's how you get to heaven. But we ain't talking about heaven. I'm not talking about heaven right now. I'm talking about right now. Okay, I'm talking about here on earth. Because we're supposed to bring heaven here. We're not supposed to just go there and just wait for it to pass and, forget everybody else. I'm worried about myself, So, I do not believe, I'm going to say it again because I don't want anybody to take this out of here. I do not believe you have to do anything besides believe who Jesus is to get to heaven. Okay? But in chapter 14 it says, what does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, in warmth, and filled, but you do not give them things which they are in need of, you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? In other words, if somebody's hungry and you're like, oh, go be blessed and be full, and then walk away, you don't give them any food, you're not blessing that person. I mean, you're like the priest who's standing on the corner praying so everybody will see him. It's just words. And I don't necessarily want to read the whole thing, but where am I? 17? Is that where I'm at? Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, it is dead. I mean, that's pretty clear. Verse 18, but someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith with my works. You believe there is one God, do you well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead? And then it goes on. I don't want to read anymore, but I just want everybody to understand that God believes this too. I'm not making this up, right? This is what he's telling us right now. I firmly believe we're in a moment in time, and we talked about it this morning, and hopefully I'll get it right, but there's two different kind of times, or there's actually three, I guess, Pastor said, but I know of two of them. Chronos time, right, which is just time as it goes by, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And then there's a kairos. Dang it, I never get it right. Kairos time, which is like a window. The way I picture in my mind is like a window or a door opening, right? As you're traveling by, there's a window or a door open, and you can choose to step through it, or it's going to pass by, right? So it's not an endless. Chronos is just time. It's just passing. You always have more. Well, I say always. I mean, there's more of it coming, right? But the other is an opportunity. I believe we're at a time of an opportunity here, that we have a window that's open to us. Yes. But it requires action. It requires us to do something. And I know that's not always popular. I don't want to do stuff. I don't like doing stuff either. I'd rather go home and watch the Cowboys whoop up on 49ers. Yeah, buddy. I prayed for the Chiefs, and now I'm going to pray for the Cowboys, so I expect all y'all support now. No. But, doing stuff, it requires energy, it requires effort, it requires stepping out, it requires a lot from you, it's sacrifice. But again, we go back to the original part that I preached on a couple of years ago when you were in Israel. Step one to this whole thing is love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and body, right? What is love without sacrifice? If you truly love Him, if you truly love God, and you don't do anything, if there's no sacrifice, if you're just sitting at home doing nothing, I just don't, because that's not what He wants for you. First of all, He's trying to show you, He's trying to bless you, He's trying to do these things, but without action, not much is going to get done. Everybody understand that. If you're not doing something, nothing's going to change. If you're not moving, you're not going to go anywhere. Now I sound like the old catcher from Johnny Bench or whatever his name was. If you're not moving, you're not going anywhere. I do want to read a little bit of Isaiah 61, and I know you guys have heard this 1,000 times, but I'm telling you, the culture of what we're doing is all wrapped up in this. You can't get away from it. I cannot get away from it. I've tried. I remember Trish and Waco, and there was a bunch of us used to have a home group, and I think it was even Trish that said, everybody give me their life verse. And it was pretty quickly, this was mine, that I believe is my life verse that I have to go back to continually because I believe it encourages you. So if we'll go Isaiah 61, verse 1, we're just going to start and just read a few of these because I want everybody to leave here encouraged of what God's called you to do and called us to do as a body. We're talking as a body right now, including the people listening outside of here, that we're all in this thing together, and this is a culture of whatever, a culture of kingdom. This is what the culture of kingdom looks like. As we meet people, this is the goal. This is what we're trying to do. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. And please don't take the word preach the wrong way. Substitute share. People have a kind of I always did, a weird connotation about preach. I'm not preaching to nobody. Okay, then share it with them. Just, you don't have to know, what Matthew 14:33 says. You just have to tell them what he's done for you. Everybody should have, my old pastor used to say this to us as a body, everybody should have a 30-second testimony, a 2-minute testimony, and a big one. You should have that ready at all times, so when people come to you, you're just like, look, I just know this. When I was 20-something years old, I was da-da-da-da, and now God has pulled me in here, and now he's taken me this. That's more powerful than anything you're going to quote from the Bible. Because nobody can question that. I mean, I can read the scripture out of here, and we can get into the whole, eschatology? No, that's the end times, but the theology and all these different things. We can argue about that all day long. You can say, well, yeah, but this and blah, blah, blah. You can't question what God did for me. I'm just telling you what he did. I know it through and through, as I'm doing that. So when it says preach good tidings to the poor, and I mean poor in spirit, poor in health, poor in, there's all kinds of poor out there. It's not about preaching to them. It's about sharing what they've done with you. So, because he has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted. There's a lot of brokenhearted people out there right now. I guarantee you, and somebody's already popped in your mind. If somebody in your life you know that is brokenhearted, man, it's amazing what just calling them up and say, hey, how are you? Been thinking about you. Don't call them and say, well, I know you're brokenhearted, but if you hadn't done that, then this wouldn't have happened. Because that's what we tend to do. I'm sorry, but it is. It's what we tend to do. We see the results because from the outside it's easy to look at it and say, well, yeah, I know they're all upset right now, but if they hadn't have done that, then this wouldn't have da-da-da-da-da-da. We go down the line and we try to fix them. Just call them and ask them how they're doing. And then whenever they started opening up to you, we had a story. Willie told us some stories, some amazing stories of different things that had happened to him. We were talking a few days ago, and every single one of them started with a relationship that he had with a person. Every single story of something that God did miraculously in his life, or that he was a part of, that witnessed or whatever. Every single one of them started with just having a conversation with somebody, building a relationship, and then they came to him, and then they built trust, and they did all these things. It took time. So as we're talking to the brokenhearted, don't try to fix them. Try to build a relationship with them. Try to love on them a little bit. To proclaim liberty to the captives, that you can take that 1,000 different ways. Freedom to people who are bound up in something. I mean, it could be hopelessness. You could make a list a mile long of all the different things that people are wrapped up in. Opening the prison to those who are bound, same kind of thing. Next verse, please. To proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance to our God, to comfort all who mourn. Next, I want to get to one certain spot here. To console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes. I want to pull this one kind of out a little bit. Because there's a lot of people out there that their lives are in ashes. Ashes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When you have a fire, you have wood and you burned up, now you got some ashes in the bottom, but you know what? He's going to turn those ashes into beauty. He's going to take what's gone wrong in your life and he's going to make it right. He's going to pull you through whatever you're going through, divorce, bankruptcy, can't buy, my kids are gone, or they're acting a fool, or, my best buddy did this, and whatever. All the things in your life that are messed up in people's lives, your life as well. But right now we're talking about, cultivating a culture of, as people come in, they're going to be brokenhearted. They're going to have ashes. we have to call out the beauty in what they're going. God can take those and they can change it. He can pull you through that if you allow him to, but you got to trust him, right? So all that stuff takes action, by the way. But beauty for ashes, the oil for mourning, the oil of joy for mourning. A lot of sad people out there. You can join in with them, or you can have the oil of joy as you approach yourself into their life. There is a lot of joy that you can. I love Jerry. Well, he's not in here now, but as he comes up, his main goal is to bring a little bit of oil of joy to these Sunday mornings every time, right? And what he said, never mind. It always makes you laugh, right? And that's how we need to approach people, with that oil of joy. The garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. How do you get rid of the spirit of heaviness? The garment of praise. Put on praise. I know sometimes, as Jessica and I have led worship, it doesn't always sound perfect. But I'll tell you what, God honors things like that. I'm just telling you. It's one of the biggest things that I've gone through, and we're talking about, and you can read on through that. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Everybody's read that. I encourage you to read it over again, because I believe this is the time we're in. This is what we're called to do. This is the culture of what we need to be as a body. And I know David we used to quote this in as a body, and we'd say it. But you kind of, over time, you move on to something else, and I think it's time we get back to exactly what David used to plant, that was planted however many years ago it's been, that this stuff's going to start producing, because that has been cultivated. And the time that we have right now is all this growth and all this fruitfulness. We're in that time, but we got to seize it. We have to seize it. And I just want to encourage everybody that as you see opportunities for people in your life, that you seize the moment. Don't wait anymore. I am the world's worst. Okay, so again, I'm not saying that I do this very well, but I have made a point, and I've stepped into this not really wanting it, and I'm just being honest with you. I would much rather have him up here preaching, and I'm just sitting there going, yeah. It's easier, right? It's easier than everybody coming asking me questions. No. I'm just being honest with you. It's so much easier to be a follower than it is a leader. And there's nothing wrong with following. I follow all the time. I'm just telling you, I'd much rather be an assistant coach than I would a head coach anymore. I was a head coach for a long time, and then I got out of coaching, and I got back in as an assistant. I'm like, this is pretty good. I can do all the fun stuff, but I don't have to worry about all the other mess that's on the side of it. The parents and the officials and the administration and you're filling out this and that, and all that stuff that's not that much fun about it. As an assistant coach, man, I get to coach the kids. We get to pull up behind. That's the fun stuff. So I just encourage you to seize the moment next time you have one come up. I've been trying to live on this because, what is that? I forget the scripture where it's at. Doesn't really matter, but, sometimes he's the light of your feet, and sometimes he lights your path. Okay? That's two different things. If you're walking in the dark, and they talked about they actually put candles, I think, David, didn't they? They put candles on their feet, so as they're walking, they can see a little space of light as they walk down the road at night. And then sometimes if your path is lit, I can see all the way down. That's where we're going. Cool, and you walk, right? And I think God does that for us two different. Either way, He wants you to step. You may not see the whole path, but right now I feel like we have a light at our feet, and He's saying, if you take a step. Because I ask Him all the time, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do. And He says, can you see where the next step is? Well, yeah. Then take the step. So you take the step, and then guess what? You know where the next step is, and you move on. And then as you go, He's going to light your path more and more and more. It's impossible to please God without faith. If you knew everything about where you were going and what you were doing, there's not a whole lot of faith in that. And I was talking to Pastor John about this the other day. You know, we make this way more complicated or more difficult than it actually is, because we're trying to move the mountains in our life. We're trying to move the mountains in other people's lives. Everybody understand, we're not called to move the mountain. Okay? That may go against what you might have thought in your mind, because it is against what I used to think. I was like, well, heck, I just pull out a hatchet and start hacking on the mountain. Pretty soon I'll get through it, right? Well, that's not what God wants us to do. God wants us to take the step, even though the mountain's there, not understanding how the mountain's going to be moved. But as we take the step, He removes the mountain. He's going to move it out of our way. But it requires us taking the step. And so that's what, you know, as we build this culture and we continue to cultivate the ground that's around us, it's already been cultivated, by the way. So it's easier now than it was 15 years ago, whenever you had to break the ground with I don't know how the plow's names and the whatever, but when you do a piece of ground first, it's a different plow than it is later when you're planting, right? And so you got to get the ground broken up. I remember Jessica talking about, we used to go out there and pick up rocks for hours when you first break it up. And as those rocks come to as it rains and the rocks come up, but all that time you're cultivating. And that's what we need to continue. They've already broke the ground. It's already plowed up. In fact, the seeds are already planted. We just got to continue to cultivate, maybe go pick up a rock every now and again, throw it in the big thing, and then the fruit is going to be coming up, and we just get to reap it. We get to reap the rewards of the 15 years of cultivating that's been going on here. And I believe the time of the harvest is now. And I don't know if any of you have not farmed or not, but if you don't go take that harvest when it's ripe, it's not worth as much. There's a certain moisture in the grain that has to be in a certain window to harvest. If you go too early, they won't pay you as much. If you wait too late, they're not going to pay you as much. There's a certain window, and that's where we're at right now with this harvest. But it requires us to jump up in the tractor and fire it up and start doing it, even though we may be tired, or maybe we got to work, or maybe we got to. But the time's now for us to act and to move and to step. And just please don't be afraid of where you're at, where you do, what you know, what you don't know. Just take a step. I promise you. I promise every one of you that I'll take it down to my grave, that if you'll take a step, he's not going to leave you out there. I love the picture of Indiana Jones, the third one, when he's going through and he comes up but on the thing, he's looking. It's a long story, but he has to take a step of faith, even though it doesn't look like nothing's there, and he sticks his foot out, closes his eyes. Oh, but that's what God will do for you. He says, take a step. You take a step, and there's something going to be under your feet. You're not going to fall into the abyss. I promise you that. So, Jessica, you want to come on up, and we'll finish it up. It's about noon, so I want everybody to know, going forward, we're going to try some things. Please don't get upset. We're going to try to do same things. I know Dave and I have talked, Pastor and I have talked, Jessica and I have talked a lot. I don't know what they are. We're gonna one of the things that I want to cultivate in this body is a culture of trying. Experiment. If it doesn't work, then we'll stop doing it. But you never know. As God calls, we're going to have a leadership meeting. This is one thing that we're going to try, and I believe everybody in this room is a leader, by the way. Amen. Everybody in this room is a leader of some kind somewhere. You're leading somebody, you're talking to somebody. So, but we're gonna be looking at some different, ideas. Shake it up a little bit. Jessica has something to say.
One of the things that we've talked about is, replacing our Wednesday class or getting us together more for discipleship, because that's how we get our foundation solidified. That's when we have an opportunity to pray for each other. That's when we get prophecies. That's one of our ways of taking another step. And one of the things that David brought up to us last night was having a Sunday school. And one of the things that I got out of, while I was reading his text was, I would like to take just a few minutes, to on your row maybe, or with the people front and behind you, to think about the things that Eric has said this morning. Kingdom of culture of kingdom is what he talked about this morning. So I know it's a little awkward, but we didn't get our greeting time this morning. So we're good at getting up and going and talking to somebody. Let's take just a few minutes here today and go and, what did God share? What did you hear today? What's something that you can walk out today? Let's interact. That's putting it into action. Sometimes I like to pray and to sing and proclaim, but this morning, let's interact with each other for just a few minutes, going over, sharing what he, get into threes. Let's do threes.
And also, if you have needs, right? Here's a great opportunity to share needs with somebody, get in prayer.